Hi everyone, welcome to Investing Club. In this video, I'm going to show you some more signs that point to us being in a huge stock market bubble right now. And what I'm going to show you is the valuation of a company that just makes absolutely no logical sense no matter which way you look at it. The stock we're going to be talking about in this video is Shopify stock. So Shopify has been one of the hottest names out there, riding on a lot of big trends that are out there right now, specifically the huge growth in the e-commerce industry we've been seeing. And so what Shopify does is it allows anyone to create their own storefront online and sell their own products. And there's been a surge in demand for this kind of product due to everyone being stuck at home. And so as a result, Shopify stock has been going through the roof lately. If you just take a look at the performance of this company over the past year, 1 year ago today, they were at under $400, and right now they're sitting at over $1,000 per share, giving this company a market cap of over $122 billion. And so what I'm going to show you in this video is the absolute most optimistic case possible for Shopify stock and why even then they don't deserve this market cap. Even if everything goes right for Shopify over the next 10 years, their real value still won't be as much as it is right now. So the chart we're looking at right now is the total volume of e-commerce sales in the US broken up by the platform which they're hosted on. And no surprise, Shopify has the biggest market share for retail e-commerce at around 21% of the entire market. So based on that information, we're going to come up with the most optimistic figure possible for Shopify's revenues. Now, Shopify's revenues is broken up into two sections. First, it's revenue from subscription solutions, and then the second part is revenue from merchant fees. Now, this is straight from Shopify's annual report. By the way, I'm going to have all of the graphs that are in this video, all the graphs and all the charts, they'll be linked in the description. So be sure to check that out if you want more information on the subject. But the revenue from subscription solutions is through the sale of subscriptions to our platform fees, and the sales of themes, apps, and domain and registration of domain names. So basically what this is saying is when you sign up for Shopify, you have to pay to use their service. And most of the time it's a monthly fee. From what I believe, the most common plan is around $30 a month. So that is one part of Shopify's revenue, customers actually paying to build a store on the Shopify platform. And so now that we know that, we can take a look at Shopify's most recent earnings report from Q1 of this year. And the revenue from their subscription solutions is listed right here. It was around $187 million. So remember what I said, Shopify controls just 21% of this market. But if we're going to be incredibly optimistic about Shopify, why can't they own 100% of the e-commerce market, right? So that's exactly what we're going to assume. We're going to assume that everyone that has a retail e-commerce store is going to use Shopify. Now we're going to have to do some math here, so bear with me. I'm going to bring up my calculator. So the first thing we're going to do is take their Q1 revenues and multiply that by 4 to extrapolate that for their potential revenues for the rest of this year. We have 187 million, and that's times 4. So right now we're at $748 million of revenue for Shopify, and that's just based on the 21% market share they have right now. But remember, this is only for the 21% market share Shopify owns. So if we want to extrapolate this to them owning 100% of the e-commerce market share, we would have to multiply this by a factor of around 5.3. So we can multiply this by 5.3. And so that alone brings us to $3.9 billion in revenue that Shopify would potentially bring in if they control the entire e-commerce market. So now even that number is not enough because it doesn't account for the huge growth that's happening in the e-commerce industry. If we take a look at this industry report, for 2020, the growth is expected to be around 19%. We'll call it 20% just to make it a round number. So if you want to account for that growth as well, you'd multiply this by 120%, and that leaves you with $4.7 billion in revenue for Shopify for 2020 if they hosted every single retail e-commerce website. All right, so keep this number in mind, and now we're going to hop to the second source of Shopify's revenues, which is their merchant fees. Here's another excerpt from Shopify's annual report talking about their merchant solutions revenues, and what these are the payment processing fees from Shopify. So whenever someone buys something from an online store hosted on Shopify, Shopify takes a cut of every sale. Normally I think it's something like 2 or 3%, I'm not exactly sure, but that is the second source of Shopify's revenue. For every dollar of sales, they collect a certain percentage of that as fees. Now from Shopify, we know that they generate roughly 1.55% of their GMV, that is their gross merchandise volume in revenue. So now what we're going to do is not only assume that Shopify hosts every retail e-commerce platform in the US, they're also going to be the platform that processes every single retail e-commerce sale worldwide. So remember, even if Shopify is responsible for every single sale, they still only generate around 1.55% of this as revenue. So from this nice chart, we can see that the estimated retail e-commerce sales for 2020 is expected to be over $4.2 trillion worldwide. So this is obviously a huge market. And so of course, this being the best case scenario for Shopify, we're gonna assume that they are the platform behind every single dollar of this $4.2 trillion in sales. But remember, like I just said, Shopify told us themselves they only make around 1.55% of these sales in revenue. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull up the trusty calculator again, and if we take that $4.206 trillion, that is the total amount of retail e-commerce sales worldwide this year, and we multiply that by the 1.55% that will end up on Shopify's revenue, that still leaves us with around 65 billion in revenue for Shopify. So we're gonna multiply this by 1,000 to get it to a nice round number. So again, what I just assumed was that Shopify owns basically a monopoly on the entire e-commerce industry. And for their merchant services, that would leave them with 65 billion in revenue. And then we have to add that first part, the service revenue that Shopify gets, and that was around 4.57 billion. So we'll add 4.75, and these are in billions, and that leaves us with total revenue for 2020 in Shopify of around $69 billion. Now here's the thing, we all know that this is never going to happen for Shopify, but best case it did, what is Shopify's market cap right now? Shopify's market cap right now is $122 billion. So it's absolutely crazy if you think about what that means. If you assume the best case scenario for Shopify, not even the best case scenario, if you assume total world domination for Shopify, their revenues still wouldn't be as large as their current market cap. And this isn't even earnings for the company. This is 69 billion in revenues. Their earnings would still be even much smaller. And so even the most optimistic valuation based on the most optimistic circumstances for Shopify, their revenues are still almost only half as big as their current market cap right now. And so if that doesn't tell you that this stock is in a huge bubble right now, absolutely nothing will. We are far past the point where investors are looking at fundamentals when investing in stocks like this. They just see the stock price going up and everyone is rushing in for that fear of missing out. So that's just a quick example I found that really shows the type of stock market mania we're in right now, where again, fundamentals do not matter at all. It's very reminiscent of the 2000-2001 dot-com bubble, where again, that was another time period where valuations didn't even matter at all. So for some other indicators, we're in a bubble right now. We can look at the fear and greed index. I'll put a link to this down below, and what this tracks is what emotion is driving the market. Because in the short term, markets are driven by emotions, by fear and greed. In the long term, markets are driven by valuation. But right now, the main emotion in the market is greed. And it's no surprise when we've seen this huge run up in the past few months. And so if you're someone who followed this index back in March during the huge drop, we were at extreme fear. And as we rebounded off those lows, this index has slowly moved up, less and less fear, until we got into the greed phase. And now it seems like investors are starting to get pretty greedy. And if we keep going up, it's not going to be long until we get into that extreme greed reading from what I've seen is a very good indicator of a top in the market. Obviously, I'm incapable of calling a top, and there's not going to be one magic indicator or index that tells you when the top is in, but this is something to watch to get a sense of how other investors are thinking in the stock market. And like Warren Buffett says, when people are fearful, you get greedy, and when people become greedy, that's when you should be fearful. And so if we do see the stock market keep going up and get in this index move into that extreme greed phase, that's when I'm going to be really waiting and watching for a sharp pullback to happen before I start investing in stocks again. So that's it for this video, just a quick example of the type of bubble we're in right now. Like I said, these can always go on for longer than you expect. So I don't know if it's coming next week or next month, but a bunch of signs are pointing to a large bubble that we're in right now, where if it pops, we could see a large decline in stock prices. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you're someone who owns Shopify stock at these insane valuations. I'm sure some of you are holders of the company, and let me know what you're planning to do. Are you planning on selling because of the valuation, or are you planning on holding that stock long term? They do have a lot of growth ahead of them. So if you like this example I gave you and want to see more like it, hit the like button so I know to make more of these kinds of videos. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. And with that, I hope to see you on the next video.